We've all seen Lethal Company. At its peak, almost every streamer on Earth played it. It reached insanely high numbers, especially for a solo dev. And due to its different approach to co-op and horror, it birthed a new category of games called lethal-likes. Some pretty popular games came from the genre later on, and then there's KLETKA. And what separates it from others is its unique universe, story, and how it came to be. There are many projects that grow with the fans of the story or concept rather than a developer. One of the most well-known examples of this is R.E.P.O, where back in 2007 a hidden user posted a 4chan thread describing a strange creature called SCP-173. And it gained so much attention that now it has thousands of SCPs created by fans and other pieces of media like various podcasts talking about SCPs and video games. Another good recent example is the back rooms. A simple image of some rooms spiraled across the internet, and now it grew into a full universe with video games, fan films, and even an official A24 movie in the works, which is insane, by the way. Also directed by an 18-year-old. What am I doing wrong? I'm 20, making a video on a fucking Russian game. Letting fans take over a concept can sometimes go wrong. But in some cases, like with KLETKA, it can work out. Although even then, in a universe built by fans, many questions can still be unanswered.
You live on the 556th floor of building P46. Last night there was another self-assembly. Even your floor has been overwhelmed. So you're afraid to go out the entrance because someone is moaning there. Liquidators will arrive in a couple of hours at best. The smell of raw meat starts.
This was the only message, posted by an anonymous user on Dvach, the Russian equivalent of 4chan back in 2013. There was no follow-up, and just like with SCP and Backrooms, fans built upon the few pieces of lore they had. There were questions like, what's a self-assembly? How are there 500 floors in a single building, and what are the liquidators? All these questions were eventually answered by the fandom, but more on that later. Soon enough, there were multiple video games based on this lore, but none gained as much traction as KLETKA. Some big YouTubers also played it, which gave it a boost. It doesn't compare to things like SCP or Backrooms, and it's still pretty unknown in the Western media, mostly because all of the lore of the universe is actually still in Russian and only loosely translated into English. And that's where KLETKA comes in, so let's talk about it. In this game, you play as a prisoner sent to the depths of building P45. The game and the universe are set in the gigastructure, a never-ending building resembling Khrushchevkas? I can't pronounce it, but they're basically Russian apartment buildings. There is no way out the gigastructure, and it's not known if an outside world even exists. There have been speculations and rumors of one existing, but nothing is confirmed. Again, this world is built by fans, so each telling of the story can be different. Besides being infinite, the structure can bend physics, with certain floors forming things that should never even exist, or don't make sense to be there at all. Some floors even have weathers and events like floods and anti-gravity, and your job in this hellhole is simple. Spawn in, enter the elevator which has a mouth, and go as deep as you can while maintaining it and trying not to die. You have to fix the machinery, but doing it without a wrench can lead to bad things happening. You have to fill the gas around once in a while, and most importantly you have to feed the mouth with whatever you can find. And how you find it is up to you. The elevator also comes with a scanner, which tells you which floor you're on. It scans the floor for anything worth looking into, and surprisingly enough, it's the only way of communication between you and KLETKA. For example, stopping on every single floor can irritate it, telling you that it's getting sick of all this stopping, and pretty much forcing you to continue. It also tells you whenever it's hungry and has to eat. Not listening to it is only gonna end bad for you. If you take care of it, you can sometimes even get presents from it, giving you what you need, or maybe not. And exploring isn't so easy either.
What the fuck? Oh hell no.
You'll come across many different traps and enemies, like the fungus. They're big, slow, and hard to take down.
Oh, what's up, bro?
You also find Gretchens, basically small guys running around stealing your stuff, you know how it is. Those are some of the most common enemies, but the deeper you go, the more you'll find, including some bosses. Killing them, and also encountering other notes or events, provides you with pieces of information stored in your journal, basically telling you what they do, their weakness, and their behavior. It also explains the effects caused by the weather events you encounter. But there is one entity that stands out as the main antagonist. SAMOSBOR isn't a creature but an event, announced by sirens echoing through the halls. When they go off, your only option is to run back and skip the floor entirely. The word SAMOSBOR translates to the self-assembly, and it's said to rebuild and reshape the floors, sometimes even creating entirely new ones. And that's why the structure seems endless. And on your journey, you might stumble upon a floor that's already been affected by SAMOSBOR, but more about it later. When you start the game, you're given 3 random sentences that act as perks, and since every floor is different, no 2 runs feel the same. You can also play with friends, which obviously makes it so much better. From there on, you just need to keep on going deeper while maintaining yourself and the elevator. And the only other safe spot is the shop. There, you can basically buy new items or sell anything you don't need for bottles, which are basically the game's currency, kind of like Fallout's caps. And the most fun part for me is discovering different error floors. Error, how do you pronounce that? They're basically completely different from any other floors. For example, and the deeper you go, the more regions of floors you're gonna find yourself in. The residential blocks come first, followed by the factory, and finally the flash mine. Each come with different layouts, enemies, and environments. In the residential blocks, you'll explore apartments and some storage areas looking for loot. Some apartments look lived in, but no one's actually there, and we're gonna come back to that later on. Some rooms have airtight doors, which, as posters scattered around imply, are used for protection against the SAMOSBOR. You can actually use these to your advantage. If going back to the elevator isn't possible, lock yourself in a room with a hermetic door and hope for the best. The next stop, the factory, is a shift in tone. It's bigger, more industrial, and harder to move through. The place is built like a maze, and with different monsters, some being invisible, exploration is more risky than before. And then comes the flash mine. This is the final stretch of the game, where the structure itself feels like it's turning on you. The walls are made of flesh and bone, with different unexplainable monsters chasing you. It really does feel like the final lap before your journey ends, and by that point you've seen a lot of what the structure has to offer. And most of the questions from the article that started it all have been answered. We know that the self-assembly is why the building is infinite, but there is still the question of the liquidators. But before we get to them, there's something else you should know to make sense of it all. In the SAMOSBOR universe, sections of the gigastructure are controlled by the Party, the only ruling government faction which seeks power and control. So, in other parts of the structure, there's actually other people with jobs, tasks, and order. The voice of the party are the liquidators. They're tasked with cleaning up whatever the SAMOSBOR leaves behind, patrolling the floors, and punishing wrongdoing citizens however they see fit, sometimes eliminating them on the spot, or taking them somewhere else, like in our case, the elevator, forcing them to explore an abandoned part of the structure. Now, there's a whole separate game called SAMOSBOR where you play as a liquidator. The game is entirely different from KLETKA. It's built in this arcadey, janky shooter kind of a way, where all you have to do is run through multiple different floors and progress as much as you can. You can also find these kind of floors in KLETKA, where it kind of shares the same similarities from SAMOSBOR, such as slime and different monsters. But why it does that is unknown. Going back to SAMOSBOR, there is something else that is worth looking into. You see, walking around, we can see other people just chilling by the fire, minding their own business, which is something that we don't see in KLETKA. You can also come across multiple terminals talking about how miserable life is in the structure. You can even find some notes in KLETKA talking about things like the shortage of concentrate, which is basically the most common food source in the structure. Playing both of these games really reminded me of something like Metro, where people stuck in like the worst possible scenarios still make a living and order. But unlike Metro, KLETKA tells you its story in its own way. Even by just exploring the structure, you'll see that it's empty but was once alive. In the factory, machines are still pounding in the metal, as if producing for people who aren't there anymore. In the residential blocks, you'll come across abandoned rooms that clearly once belonged to someone. Beds unmade, tables set, but empty for who knows how long. The game doesn't rely on cutscenes or direct storytelling. Instead, it lets the environment speak. Scraps of notes scattered around, strange posters spilling off the walls, and random rooms that feel like they're supposed to be inhabited but aren't. All of it adds up into a bigger picture you'll have to piece together on your own. Eventually, you're gonna reach the 100th floor, the final floor in the game. Instead of seeing another hallway or room like you're used to, you'll find a chained heart, surrounded by the walls of the structure. You're forced into a pretty cool boss fight, where you have to use everything you've brought so far. And once you win, the heart stops beating, the walls start crumbling, and the game ends.
A massive organ bound in chains. It beats somewhere deep below the foundation, and with each pulse, it sends out a command, a signal, the rhythm of life for the entire complex. No one knows what keeps it going, but when it stops, all life on the gigastructure stops with it.
While I did most talk about the game in this video, there is a whole other website talking about every single thing that we know of this universe. So if you're interested, I'll leave a link in the description and you should go check it out. Other than that, well, thank you for watching, subscribe, and join the Discord, please, I want to see you there. And yeah, bye.